Let's look at question number 4th, which is from microeconomics. So in this we have been given that there's some consumer who consumes rice and some other composite commodity, we can assume. So there's some subsidy scheme in place because of which he can buy some let's say Q0 amount of rice for a subsidized price, and after that he has to purchase the remaining amount from the free market. So this is, let's say, amount of rice, and this is some composite numerator commodity Y that is, or you can call it the remaining income which is left. So what would be the budget line of this consumer? So suppose this is the subsidized quantity Q0, which is which he can purchase from the market at a subsidized quantity, which he gets at a subsidized price. So till Q0, the price that he faces will be small, and once he reaches Q0, after that the price is going to be higher. So the amount of Y he needs to give up for every additional unit of R is going to be higher. So this is what the budget constraint will look like. It will have a kink at, or an angle at this quantity Q0. Okay. Now, so this that takes care of our first part. Now let's look at the second part. In the second part, what's happening is that he's asking what will happen to the quantity of rice purchased from open market if in equilibrium if there's a cut in ration quota. So suppose right now the quantum consumed is somewhere here. This is, let's say, the indifference curve which is depicting the ideal consumption point of this agent. Now what happens is, after this reduction in quantity, the indifference curve will change. Okay, so the quantity he can consume now with at subsidized price reduces to, let's say, Q1, which is less than Q0. So he can only consume this much amount of subsidized plan. So this part is okay, because if he consumes no amount of rice, this is basically his amount of income. So his income is fixed, so this part of the budget line is okay. What happens is the difference occurs beyond this point. So after this point, the budget line will have the same slope as this one. Okay, so this will be the new budget line. Now what happens with this new budget line, if you try to push this inside, then since rice is a normal good, what we'll see is the tangency happens somewhere here. Okay, so this will be the new tangency point. So as you can clearly see, the amount of rice that he consumes reduces. Okay, but what he's asking is not what happens to the total amount of rice. What he's asking is what happens to the quantity of rice purchased from the open market. What happens to the quantity of rice purchased from the open market? Will it go down or will it be up? So that is what I am interested in finding. So let's assume that it remains the same. Let's assume that quantity of rice consumed from the open market remains the same. Okay, so initial quantity he consumed, let's say Q0, was some quantity Q0 plus Q open market. So let me call it Q1. Oh no, I have already Q hat. And let's say Q1 is the new total quantity. It's going to be Q1 plus Q hat. Okay, so what we're saying is that the overall change only happens on account of this reduction which is happening in the subsidized quantity. So now we can look at the MRS. So since the other commodity that we are considering is numeraire, what we want is that marginal utility of rice must be constant. Okay, because marginal utility of rice upon price of rice in open market must be equal to 1. This must be a fact, because the other commodity is the numeraire commodity that we are considering. Sorry, Y is the numeraire commodity. So marginal utility upon price must be equal to 1. So this price of rice remains same, so it implies that marginal utility of rice must also remain same. So this implies that marginal utility of rice at Q0 must be equal to marginal utility of rice at Q1. Okay, for the total quantities Q0 and Q1. So marginal utility upon price should be the same, right? Now what that leads me to believe is I need my total marginal utility to remain the same. Now if my total quantity, okay, so I am definitely on an interior IC. So if I were to substitute this entire quantity with my new good, okay. So as we can notice here, the amount of numerator good which is being consumed also goes down, right? So the Y star that you're consuming reduces. So as your income, as the quota for subsidized rice reduces, as Q0 reduces to Q1, your Y star reduces, which clearly implies that the consumption of market rice has to go up. Okay, so the solution here is that as the quota for subsidy reduces, the consumption of market rice from the market will definitely go up. Now let's look at the third part of the problem. So in this, again, rice is considered as a normal good. What will happen to the quantity of purchase in open market if subsidized price is increased but still lower than open market? So now what will happen is, so suppose we try to draw the curves. The budget set will look, so this is the consumption set, and initial thing looks like this. All right, now the quota remains the same, but this thing has gone down. The price has increased. So what happens is, something like this. Okay, so this will be the new budget line. So this is the new budget line, and the other thing is the old budget line. Okay, so now we are supposed to figure out what happens to the quantity purchased in the open market. So this was the old indifference curve which you were consuming at. Now the new indifference curve could very well be here. Okay, so the new indifference curve could very well be here. So in that case, it's not going to be very straightforward for us to determine who's going to be consuming less or more. But one thing is clear here, that the overall consumption of rice has reduced. Okay, so the total rice consumption reduces. Now what that implies is that the quota for cheap rice is fixed, right? So if the reduction happens, it will definitely happen at the market price, because if you have to reduce your consumption of rice, you will first of all reduce the consumption from market rice, because that is the costlier one. So if the overall consumption of rice is falling, then market rice will fall first. It can even become zero in this case, because you could very well have this month as the new utility maximization point. But one thing is pretty obvious, that the consumption of rice is going to fall, market rice is going to fall. So so we have two different situations here. In one case, the market price of subsidized rice is increased. In that case, the consumption of price of subsidized rice is reduced, part C. In that case, we see that the consumption of market rice reduces. The other is when the quota of free rice reduces. In that case, the consumption of market rice will go on to increase.